Welcome to the Chef of X podcast.
Because I obviously don't know how. With plastic straws, you just go in and bends to your will.
The metal straws are not very forgiving.
If
you're going to jam that right up your tooth, you're going to break off part of your tooth.
You really have to reach out with your lips, grab it, and then place it where it's supposed to be. Because if you just go for a chomp.
Well, you should think about maybe silicone straws, because they're little. Those are more forgiving. Paper straws. There's a lot of different types of straws.
Well, what I was going to say is I'm a new kombucha brewer. Now, I've never made kombucha, but I did grow a Scoby, so I'm in the game.
Oh, okay.
And it's been brewing for the last 2 weeks, and one of the steps is you're supposed to taste it to see if it's still sugary, because I'm putting sugar tea in with a bunch of bacteria. You know about Scobies probably more than most people if you have a biology background, possibly more than most people. But
I'm familiar, but I mean, if you don't brew your own kombucha, then it's a little different. Like I'm familiar with the process and what's it called, the bacteria involved. Yeah. But much more than that, I don't know about taste. I don't know what makes it taste better or worse, or what you want to put in it and not put in it. That's kind of where my knowledge ends.
Well, here's where my knowledge ends. You take some sugar, you give it to the bacteria, they do some magic, and then you have kombucha.
Magic.
Well, yeah, it's complete
It's called
magic.
Fermentation?
Sure, whatever that is, right?
Oh, boy. I mean, I have my background in biochemistry. I literally had to memorize every single step involved.
Yeah.
And, the reactions of, just, the basic structure, the chemical structure, and this moves and then that moves and then this gets
I know
off.
of chemical structures, but that of kombucha or Scobies? No, I don't know shit. I know it's supposed to be white. And I know, to bring it back, I know that if I were to put a metal straw in there and slurp it, if I taste some sugary shit, that means the Scoby hasn't really eaten up the sugars it's supposed to, so I need to just leave it for longer. And usually the Scoby enjoys the heat, apparently. So it's been pretty cold, and I think this is why it's taken my Scoby so long to
I'm thinking
grow.
about, do you know what type of, it's bacteria, correct?
Yeah, it's bacteria.
It's not yeast. So,
well, there should be some yeast in it, I think.
Do you know what type of bacteria?
No. I know that Scoby is an acronym, though.
If you're actually genuinely interested.
In fact, the Y in the acronym stands for yeast.
Okay. I was just thinking about, because there are specific conditions in which bacteria will grow better. That's why we have agrobacterium that grows at 28 degrees Celsius and E. coli grows at 37 degrees Celsius. That's their optimum temperature. So if you're trying to grow bacteria, then there's an optimum temperature to keep it at.
Well, it's in my roommate's closet on the top shelf. And also the heater doesn't go into a room well. So it's the coldest room in the house. So I think the bacteria are possibly dead. But I grew the Scoby in that same condition with no sugar. So the fact but it did take a month. So I think it's working, but it's just working slowly. Also, the Scoby should, I don't know if it doubles in size, but it increases in size each time you brew. Mm-hmm. And apparently in quality somehow. I don't know how. They're just more mature Scoby in there. The bacteria are stronger. Physically, they've been working out.
They've been working out.
All the
they
sugar
got a
they've been
fucking gym
eating.
in there.
Yeah. The sugar is their gym, which is why I'm sad that my mixture is sugary, because they haven't been hitting the gym. Therefore, I don't have kombucha to drink today. Therefore, what the fuck am I even doing this whole thing for? If I have to wait so long, I might as well just go to, get some kombucha on food stamps at the local Rite Aid, if that's the case.
Honestly, kombucha is so easy to obtain here that I don't know why people, I guess I understand why some people would go through the trouble
it's not trouble, because you don't really have to do anything once you set it up, but the trouble is the waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like making anything homemade, ramen eggs. To actually, you can go to a restaurant and get them right then and there, but it takes them 3 days to prepare that.
I don't even know what you're talking about. There's a special kind of egg.
Yes. It's I was going to say Gabe would be able to explain it well. It's a special kind of egg, and it's like soft-boiled egg, but they let it like, what's the word? Marinate in specific like sauces and stuff, and it just changes the taste of the egg and the like texture of the egg.
Huh, soft-boiled.
It's really good.
And people eat it soft-boiled, or do they do something else with it?
No, just soft-boiled. So it's like they soft-boil the egg and then let it marinate in the sauce for like 3 days.
In the ramen, I'm guessing?
In the ramen. Yeah. No, in not in the ramen. The sauces are like separate. They have their own flavor. And then they use those eggs for the ramen.
Huh.
It has a completely different taste. I should take you to a good ramen place, but I don't know of any here in Davis.
Oh, that's a diss.
Hurt. Yeah, but I mean, there's okay places, but like when we were in San Diego, I mean,
I can imagine. Well, wait a minute. Why would San Diego be better at ramen?
There's this, it's called Menya Ultra. The people who owned the restaurant came from Japan and have opened that restaurant and have been in the restaurant business since like 18 something. They've been in for a long fucking time. Yeah. And I mean, once their doors opened, it was like a 3-hour wait just to get a seat. And it's just the best ramen you've ever had. So this is their first location here in the U.S. And so it's like everybody just is always trying to get in. Like every single day, it's that busy.
Wow.
Like you're on a wait list. What's really funny is that there's a Daiso next door.
Yeah.
So you just go on the wait list and then wander the aisles at Daiso until your seat's ready.
Okay. It's a full experience.
Yep. And I think Daiso is pretty happy that they opened up nearby, because that's probably not like where a lot of their business comes from, but it's definitely a good business.
Yeah. Wow. No, I was kind of a top ramen guy when I was a kid, so I don't really know much about ramen.
I didn't even know that ramen was anything other than instant ramen. Yeah. Until Gabe actually moved to San Diego, and I was informed that, I was uninformed. Yeah. And my life changed. It's like one of my favorite foods ever. Yeah.
Is it nutritious, ramen?
Nutritious? I don't know if I'd say that. I mean, it's a lot of sodium. Yeah. And it's very it's a very brothy thing, but they do include like bamboo shoots and bean sprouts and stuff like that. So depends on what you get.
I have a roommate who works in food tech. And when I first moved in, he had a bunch of ramen. Well, he had a variant of ramen that was meant to be more healthy. So, I mean, I figured the answer was no, it was ramen healthy. But he said, oh, yeah, well, people love ramen already. So, this, whatever, try it out. And Bez came to my house. And I said, yeah, man, you should try some of this. And I did something wrong. I prepped it wrong. And I gave it to him. And he ate like 3 bites of it. And he was like, nah, I don't want any more of this shit. And I was thinking, I really missed an opportunity, because if I could have, like, Bez is a food guy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what is his major? Clinical nutrition or something?
I don't know.
I think it was something along those lines, because I know he's like...
I think it's something dealing with personal training.
Well, he's pre-physical therapy.
Yeah.
So he's pre-PT. But he's super into food. Like, I know he had to take a lot of nutrition classes. So I think he's clinical nutrition, which would make sense why he's super into food.
Yeah. Well, I served a food guy some bad ramen, and I actually felt kind of bad about it, because he's constantly giving people food.
more critical about the food that he receives.
That's the thing, is that
who's the chef now?
I know, right? I mean, he is a real chef. But even if I would have prepared it properly, he probably would have rejected it. But the fact that I misprepared it kind of made me think, well, I probably should have done a better job. This is a food guy in my presence. This is some specialty ramen.
Why do you think he wouldn't like it, though? Huh? What makes you think that he wouldn't like it?
Because it really wasn't the best ramen. It was the best at what it was trying to do.
Which wasn't a lot.
Which wasn't taste the best. It was be the most nutritious. Now, here's what he told me. You could eat only this ramen for the rest of your life and you'd be good. That was their that's what they
That's
were
their
going
slogan.
for.
Only eat this. It's like dog food. You don't even have to make decisions.
You don't have to make decisions. And that's what I was doing when I first moved in there. I would eat this ramen nonstop. And I wouldn't care what the flavor was. He had his own specialty, like, oh, I prefer these flavors. I should just give me everything.
Honestly, it takes the decision making out of it. Like, you don't even have to think about it. I think that a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about food, and it just, honestly, I feel like it wastes a lot of my day.
Well, yeah, yes and no. Because the side of food that's really cool that you miss out on when you're doing these drinkable foods or these all-encompassed ramen meals is the social side where it's like every time you explore a new recipe, that's something new that you can bring to friends, family, whatever, so that they can have an experience. Whereas you're in my world, there are no food experiences to give.
Yeah.
Except here, try some drinkable food. They drink it. That's it. Probably won't like it. Okay, that's it.
End of story.
Enjoy understanding what it's like to kind of be a maniac. That's what I'm sharing. It's not the food. It's the culture. You get to taste it a little bit.
That's so funny. That reminds me of the lab that I'm currently in. There's someone in the lab that her thing is that she's wanting to try every apple out there, how do you even? Why is that the goal? I mean, I work in plant sciences, so I don't know. That could probably have something to do with it.
But that still leaves the question of how did you narrow it down
to apples? Well, actually, I know why it was apples. She said that, she's from China.
Yeah.
And so when she came here, she was like, yeah, in China, we have only certain amount selection of apples. But when she came here, she was like,
there's so many apples.
Well, but why? Why do you need so many apples?
Yeah.
And then she realized she was like, everyone seems to have a different palate taste. So they need all these apples to meet supply demand. And it was really she was really interested.
Maybe they do need. What do I know? But it seems like they're trying to create the demand. I mean, are people dreaming of these apples?
I mean, obviously she is.
She's the only one. She's creating all the demand.
She'll come back to the lab with a different apple each day, and I'm like, how far are you driving?
At least she's
to
making
at least
progress
get these.
with her goals.
Where are you getting these from? And they have some weird name like green emerald, or I don't even remember the other types, but they were where are you getting this? I know the top ones, but
Granny Smith.
Granny Smith, Red Delicious.
I don't even know that one. Red
Fuji,
Delicious. How many?
Gala.
Really?
Yeah. You
know what? Maybe if I saw them,
Pink Ladies,
then I would recognize them and not know the name. But no, I don't know these. No, I don't know these names.
There's a lot of fucking apples out there. I didn't even realize that there was that many strands of apple.
How about Purple Prize? Have you tried that one?
Is that a thing? I don't know if you're just making this shit up, though.
It's either a stripper name or a new apple.
Can you imagine the people trying to name coming up with their apple name, and they just go into a strip club and then boom, they know their apple name.
Just go into the weed store and just create variations of that.
I mean, I wonder what. Even just strains of weed, they have really fucking weird names.
Yeah, but I think
oil.
I think that it's fair to say that the experience you're getting from different strains of weed and drugs in general are going to be more profound than different apples. So you can name it based off of what you're experiencing with weed. But with apples, it's really, what can you even?
What kind of experience?
And maybe this is somebody who's speaking as someone who I'm not the biggest fan of apples. Fair, to be fair.
I think apples are apples. I mean,
you got to compare apple to apple, right? but
in her case,
even as someone who's not really in the apple field, it's a fair claim to say these differences aren't going to be profound, life-changing. It was just special for her because she basically was surprised by it. It's just like a healthy curiosity, but that's different from a drug, which really is going to give you a powerful experience. You take enough milligrams of this, you're not even going to feel like a human anymore, right?
Oh, boy.
And Apple's not going to do that to you.
I've had the worst fucking trip. Yeah, like literally there's this worst fucking trip, and I was like, I don't even know what type of drug I'm on anymore. Like, I thought so, but I'm experiencing something that, like...
Yeah.
This must be laced with something. But, I mean, it was from a dispensary, so I hope they didn't lace it with anything.
Probably
but you never,
not.
you never know.
You never really know, but it's less likely.
Less likely. I was just, what's funny is, so I was like the last trip that I had, it was last night.
Yeah.
But, it was, very unpleasant. And I was thinking, like, of course.
Did you eat?
It was inedible. Yeah. And so it was really interesting because I was like getting schizophrenic symptoms again.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I could think about was that THC affects your dopamine receptor. And the medication that I'm on affects my dopamine receptor.
Yeah.
And if you take too much dopamine, like dopamine levels being way too high is similar to other types of a drug or similar to people who have, balances of imbalanced brain chemistry.
Yeah.
And so high levels of dopamine can also cause like schizophrenia or this or that.
Yeah.
So it was like, So my medication, in addition to THC, is just causing like an excess of dopamine in my system, which is making me like my symptoms be more like people who have this imbalance of brain chemistry.
Yeah. It really is like that. I felt pretty imbalanced over the last week, actually. I had a weird experience. I don't know if it was sleep paralysis or like a baby seizure. But I was in bed, and
how do you get confused between the two?
Guys, let me just explain what I experienced from my perspective. I was in bed, I had a dream, and it was a normal dream. And then at some point in the dream, a hand reached out and grabbed my chest.
That must have been terrifying.
So then I woke up, but when I was awake, I was like, my body doesn't feel, something's a little off, right? It felt like there were fireworks in my brain.
Were you able to move?
I think I was, but I didn't. So that's why I bring in the sleep paralysis part. Because I've heard people describe sleep paralysis as like, oh, there's a demon on my chest and I can't move. And it's like looking at me or whatever. But then I bring in the seizure part because I'm like, well, if I was asleep and I was waking up and I was having a seizure, would I don't feel like I was shaking, but how would I experience it? It's possible that it would have been similar to what like firework in the brain feeling, that's all I could say to describe it.
I feel like that's interesting because sleep paralysis, at least from like experiencing it and then also knowing people that are experiencing it, is more of like waking up and not being able to move, and you're just like stuck. Like your brain's intact.
Yeah.
But
and that's the thing. My brain was intact.
Like paralysis, essentially. Like you are wanting to like get up and move, but your brain telling your arm to move is just not moving.
Yeah. Well, for me, I didn't try to move. I just relaxed. So I don't know if I could have moved or not. Yeah. But there's no fireworks in the sleep paralysis.
Well, how do you know? Because other people, demons sitting on their. I mean,
that could have been the way that their brain interpreted.
And for you, it's fireworks.
And for me, it could have been maybe more direct. I don't know. So anyhow, it was a fun week. Is what I'm trying to say.
A fun week of fireworks in the brain.
Yeah, I didn't. But I was remembering when I used to smoke weed. I remember I was smoking weed in Alabama. You mentioned being laced with some shit. I always think back to those memories of smoking weed in Alabama because, like, you really didn't know if you were getting something was laced.
Yeah, in Maryland either.
There's no dispensary. There's no medical anything.
There's nothing nearby.
So I would literally...
you never know what these people are fucking doing.
Yeah, I would go to a dorm room Like I had this roommate, or I had this friend who was from New Orleans, and he was just like a major stoner, and I wasn't. I had just tried it, dabbled in it a little here and a little there, and he moved. You know, who knows? The semester changed. He moved in with a drug dealer, and he says, "Oh, just go with this guy. He's I never bought my own. Yeah, I wasn't buying my own drugs. I was just smoking other people's stuff. But eventually, I said, you know what? Let me be mature. Let me start buying my own drugs and take some responsibility. You know. So he said, just buy it from this guy. He'll give you a discount. I trust this dude. Whatever. I go to his room, and my friend isn't there. By the way, the first time I go there, so I'm like,
it's sketchy.
Yeah, he wasn't. So I should have gone with him, but he was. I went in, knocked on the door, and I said, hey, Jaleel sent me or whatever. He's like, oh, okay, yeah, come in. He puts a gun on the desk.
Shit yourself.
And then he fucking takes out this this baggie and starts, crumbling stuff up. But I can't see the scale. I'm trying to peek. He took the like corner of a plastic bag, ripped it off, put the weed in there and twisted it up.
I've seen the dime bag. The fucking dime bags.
And he's like, yeah, $20 or whatever. And I'm like, all right.
What other choice do I have if you just drop the fucking gun?
What choice do I have? So I go to my room. I have this little mini bubbler, I put on some music. Fill it up with water. And I'm smoking this stuff. And it's like, I just remember it crackling a lot more. And I was like, it's probably fine.
Ignored the crackling. This sketchy ass weed that I got.
I'm like, yeah, and I'm getting high. So, this is the best that I have to hope for. And then, fast forward, I end up, going through whatever, these mental health fucking trials. And then I'm looking back at it and I'm like, yeah, it was really one of the worst situations weed wise that I could have been in, because it's like, there's no verification. So that skepticism you feel going to the dispensary, just imagine that magnified, being like, okay, like, we're in a small town in Alabama right now. Like, I could be sent to prison for this.
Yeah.
This is insane.
Yeah. In Maryland, it was the same way so my parents were like, after a while of feeling sketched out by people, they just started growing it themselves. So they were like, you know what? We know this isn't laced.
Yeah.
We grew it. And if it was laced, we did it while we were high.
Yeah. We did it while we were high. Yeah. We decided
to lace it with shit.
Well, one interesting thing that's happening, speaking of growing weed, is that there's so many strains available for purchase that now, even though I don't know all the laws in California, but I'm pretty sure it's legal for you to grow some amount now. Is it? Like in your closet or something like that?
For your own possession?
Yeah.
I don't know the laws per se about that.
Well,
but I think that you can't sell it. There's a lot of laws between like selling it. I just don't know if how it is about growing it yourself. I think it's like you can have a plant. Yeah. And then that's it. But I don't know exactly about that. I know that there's just a lot of regulations about it. Yeah. But I know that it's not Maryland or Alabama.
Yeah, it's not Maryland or Alabama. Well, speaking of the future, let's maybe not now, but in the future, it will be possible to grow your own plants eventually somewhere.
I feel like it is, yeah.
And smoke it, right?
Legally. California legalized it, so
hopefully,
a lot of other states.
Yeah. That being said, there's still not an open and shut case for growing it if you don't have access to the strains that you want.
That's true.
So, I know for me, having the, I think the indicas, the ones that are more like the sleepy ones, the drowsy indica ones. Mm-hmm. Yeah, having those it was really important that if I smoked them, it would be some amount of indica. Like the pure sativas really were not good for me. So
I get you on that, because sativas, I've literally never had a very good experience with sativa until recently, and it was this one particular strain. Yeah, it was just great, and but ever since then it's like indica's been good. And what's funny is that the whole what's it called, the symptoms that you get from indica versus sativa. I had my friend over from New Hampshire. And so she said she's never gotten high before in her life. And so I was like, oh, well, you should. But I would have started off with her as a sativa.
Yeah.
But I didn't own any sativa. So I just like, all right, I guess you're going to experience an indica. And I hotboxed her because, of course, she didn't really know how to like breathe properly. And it didn't matter of any explanation that I gave her. So I was like, okay, well, if you're hotboxed, you have no choice. And then the first thing that she did when she was high was, obviously, she was just laughing the entire time out of nothing. But that's like a given. And she went immediately to the fridge, ate something, and then immediately to bed and just slept. That was it. That was literally like the duration of her experience of being high was eating and sleeping and laughing. Yeah. The entire time. But my first experience of being high was ridiculous. I was 14 and I was under my parents' supervision. Wow. And it was their edible. And they
started you off with edibles.
Yes, they did. Surprisingly. Yeah. I don't know why. Yeah, in any right mind.
I've never done edibles, but that's what I've heard is that they're more extreme.
Oh, God. Yeah. I mean, at least for me, I really like smoking. I prefer smoking because you have a way of controlling your intake. Yep. But with edibles, it takes so long to hit. So, like, for me, like, normally it takes you wait an hour. And then a lot of people, what they do is they don't feel anything after an hour and they get frustrated, so they take some more. But then after, like me, maybe 5-10 minutes more, they regret taking more because then it starts to hit. And then there's no way of properly dosing it because it just takes so long to, it takes so long to be effective. And for me, the funny thing too is like, for me, I was like, okay, it's been 2 hours. I took like whatever amount. And I was like, normally this amount hits me 2 hours, like an hour in. It's been 2 hours. This is taking way too long. And it was the same thing as I ate that for New Year's. Yeah. So like for me, you saw how it affected me fairly quickly, but it took 4 hours. Yeah. And at that point, I was like, I just don't even, I don't really care to be high. I'm gonna watch this movie and go to bed. And then it hit me at the end of that fucking movie. Oh. Yeah, but it was a bad trip because it was weird to me because it's like for me in my like the mental health position that I was in, it was it felt like the medication that I was on was just gone. So I didn't have any medication helping my like brain function. So all I was doing, like my depression just kind of hit me all at once. And like all the other symptoms that I get, the hyperparanoia, whatever it is, it also helped me realize about the progress that therapy has done. Yeah. And actually like going through the steps of therapy over again while I was high and experiencing everything in a heightened way. Yeah. Yeah. So I was just like, I don't know. The drugs can have a positive effect and then they can also have a negative effect. But I don't know. Have you had, good, assuming you have had bad and good experiences, what has been the most memorable?
My baby seizure is I'm talking about prescription drugs now. That's the only thing, and that might not even have had anything to do with my lithium. I take a mood stabilizer. But I suspect it might have had something to do with it because I had like a couple of days off of it, but that would mean that I have less lithium in my body, which would be weird. So maybe my body overreacted or something. I don't know. Fuck it now.
Less tolerant.
But yeah, I had a large number of bad high experiences before I had like a full on psychotic episode, and it was like looking back, it was like it was like there was a trail leading up to it, but they were all kind of funny in a weird way. Like one of them was that I was dating this girl for like a year or something, and she ended up joining a sorority and dumping me. Like literally after she joined.
Because of or
she probably just hated me the whole time and just finally had she got an offer or something. Somebody said, well, now you're part of this sorority, you should be fucking with me, not him. And I was like kind of a loser. I was a guy from California and Alabama. I didn't have fraternity shit. I didn't have crazy money. I was a skater. That's not the right place to be a skater, you know?
And Alabama's not a good place for that, for sure.
No, I was a laughing stock. But I was like academically competitive, but they didn't even really respect that. They respected jobs.
Yeah.
So if you got all C's, but you worked at PG&E, then they respected that more than somebody who was like, hey, I like do research. Like, who are you?
But how much money do you make?
Yeah, how much money do you make, bro? So I did end up making money, but it was after all this went down. Actually, it was in between. So this is what happened. She dumps me. Then that summer, I started making money. And then she was like, let's get back together.
What a gold digger. She knows. Work the system.
So she invites me to this sorority party as like, you know, us getting back together. It was like the beginning of the year. The summer was over. She's like, yeah, come to this party, you know? First day of school or something. I go to the party, but
oh boy,
the same guy whose roommate was the drug dealer, he smokes me out. He's like, man, I know you've been going through a lot. Just smoke with me. But this guy's a major stoner. I'm not. So we're doing bong hits. I don't know I never know what we're smoking, right? This is Alabama. But I'm just trying to keep up with him.
Oof.
I get out.
You know what?
I get out of the car. We're at the club. It's like the dirtiest, dingiest club you can imagine. I mean, the toilets there were basically holes in the ground. It's like the walls weren't well. There's all this plaster everywhere.
I thought you were going to say the walls are covered in shit.
No, luckily not. Well, in some of the stalls, yeah. But we go up there and like I step out of the car and everything just shoots backwards like like I'm in a way bigger space. And I was I'm here.
Yeah, so it hit you.
Yeah, I'm like, how do I even walk to the club? It's not that far. We get there. The guard is patting me down and I'm just crying, laughing. It's so hysterical to me. The way he's patting me, he's like, turn around.
Seems so,
and I'm like,
so functional.
What is this? And it was like, by the time I got in there, every minute that I was there, my memory only lasted 1 minute before. So I was like, I don't even know what's going on. I don't
even know why I'm here.
So here's the creepy thing. I start hearing voices, right?
Yeah.
Narrating, but it's me. It's not like, you know, crazy stuff. It's like my own thoughts are just really abstract.
Yep.
This girl walks out of the crowd and she's coming toward me. And the voice says, like, you guys are like connected. I don't even remember seeing her face. And I'm like, I literally have no idea who you are, but I'm just going to go along with this voice. So she's like, hey baby, how are you? Or whatever. And I just like give this random person a hug who I feel like I don't know and have never met. And like, that's the rest of the night. I'm like, I don't know this fucking person, but they're being nice to me. So I'm just gonna, you know.
Gonna go with it?
I'm just gonna play it off. So I wake up the next morning and she's mad at me, of course. Right. And I'm like, what the fuck did I do? Right. I went to your party. I accepted this relationship.
I did everything. Everything that you asked for.
I did everything you asked for. And she said, you didn't give me a place to sit.
What?
And then I remember back, and what happened was I was so high, I was sitting in a chair, and all the chairs were filled. And she came up and she said something that wasn't direct. Like she said, it would be nice if I could sit down. And I'm so high, I'm not even processing that she's asking me to give up my chair. So I'm like, oh yeah, it would be nice if you could sit down. And
like from an outside perspective, you're like, that's fucked up. But then when you're high as balls, you're like,
I didn't.
Yeah.
It got to the point where it was like, fuck remembering 1 minute before. I couldn't even remember a few seconds before. Like everything that was happening, like it was brand new. Like I was having a novel experience. I had no data from the past.
Yep.
I was just existing as a being in that moment purely. Yep. And yeah, it was wild. But like the fact that it was, you know, nothing bad happened other than the seat thing. Mm-hmm. But when I look back at that experience, I really do feel like other people don't ever have those high experiences. And maybe I'm wrong.
For what? Those particular high experiences?
Like the memory being gone to that level, not remembering people, just just being so gone that you can't even, it's impossible for you to be yourself.
I think for me, my dog has joined. For me, the memory loss, if that's a good way of putting it, that's normal for me. And maybe not every single, I would say that seems to be pretty common. Not remembering people, I don't think so. I've never had the not remembering people. But I've gotten to where, like, me and Gabe have come up with this, like, scale of, like, how high are you or how drunk are you or whatever. Yeah. You have a scale so that we know, like, okay, I should be babysitting this person, or this person needs to drink a lot more water, or, you know, like, maybe you should take away their drink, or, you know, whatever it is that needs to be done. So, sorry, my nose is like running. Sorry, Dex is also very distracting.
Oh, you have headphones on. I wonder how that sounds.
Oh,
no. It's fine.
There's been, or at least the first time that I was high, it was a really interesting experience, but I was high for 3 days. Mm-hmm. And I thought that I fucked up because this is the rest of my life. It was always going to be this way. Yeah. And there was one experience with that what the fuck is this laced with shit? Yeah. I felt like my scale of 1 to 10 of where I knew what high was, it went past that.
Oh my God.
And I was like, 10? It went past the high that I even knew existed. Like, I thought, okay.
Well, what were the symptoms?
So I always describe to people who are getting high for the first time about what they're going to experience, because I don't want them to be unaware of it or be scared or whatever. And I've actually talked to Aaliyah, is her name? Bez's friend? Yes. Yeah, about, like, talk to her about what I was describing of, like, being high or being drunk feels like, and then having her describe other drugs, what they feel like, so I could feel.
She's never been high or drunk?
No, she has. No. Oh. I mean, she's done a lot more drugs, is what I'm saying. Like, I have a question about what shrooms feels like, and then having them describe it to me the exact ways I would describe to someone else being high. Yeah. So normally what I describe being high to feel like for me is that I start to feel it when I feel like irradiating, like, you know how your leg falls asleep, or that like feeling that you have. Yeah. I start to feel that at least either in the front of my brain, like your frontal cortex. Yeah. That's the music you hit.
Yeah. Is that the rice cooker or something?
That's the rice cooker.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
How long does it go on for?
That's it. Yeah. Just that. Or in the back of my head on the two sides, I feel this radiating, like, it's more of a radiating feeling, but it's a radiating feeling of like that arm falling asleep feeling, but it radiates. Yeah. And then after that, I get what I refer to as the laggy eyes. And what I describe it as is the actual function of what actually happens to your body and why it actually feels like you have laggy eyes. And what happens is that when you look at anything, when you look at a point and then you move to another point, what your brain does is take a picture of this particular point and then this particular point and blurs everything in between. So if you like move your eyes quickly, you'll notice that it's like it blurs the in between. Right. But what happens when you intake marijuana is that there is no blur anymore. It's just picture, 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 and it's black in between. True. It's black in between. So I call it laggy eyes because it lags. It kind of goes places, but without having that blur. So that's what I describe to people as laggy eyes. And you're familiar with what I'm describing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is an effect.
And then another thing too is that things seem funny to you because then I don't know if I described this to you or someone else, but there are types of comedy. Yeah, I described, there are types of comedy. And so when you're unable to predict what's going to happen, which is the whole thing about when you're on marijuana, it's like very present and not being able to remember, like your short-term memories, like not really there. So since you're unable to predict what's going to happen next, everything seems funny to you because you're like, wow, you know, even though this normally like common thing, like if you're walking from this space to this space, you know, you're going to end up like one space to this space. Yeah. But when you're high, you're just walking and you're not like, you don't know what's going to happen. So when you end up in a new space, you're like, what the fuck? How did I get here? You know? Yeah. So it's funny to you also the fact that you, forget, like, you know, you don't have short-term memory. Everything also is funny to you because you forget what you were just talking about or what was just happening. And then you have no way of predicting anything. So everything just seems funny to you. Or things that just like catch you off guard, like even simple jokes that just kind of like seem to change topic suddenly. Those seem way funnier because it's like you can't even predict it. Yeah. And then, so those are the levels of high, like starting to get high and higher and higher. As I said, like those are like 1 to 5 on my scale of 1 to 10. Then you get body high, which also feels like your limbs are very far and disconnected. Like when you look at your arms, they just don't feel like attached to you. They're just kind of there. Yeah. Like they're separated. Shoulders and arms, yeah. Yeah, they're kind of distant. Like, wow, this is so far away from me, but it's like attached to me, huh? And I'm able to move them. And then also your senses become heightened. So when you feel things, like the first time I was ever high, we had like the same type of walls, and all I was doing was rubbing the wall. Because that's all I could feel. But there's actually a way of doing that in meditation of where you, it's called mindful meditation or something along those lines. And what you do is you focus on all of your senses. When you close your eyes and become aware of every single thing, like you close your eyes and you're aware of the way that your clothes feel on you, the way that your feet touch the floor, the way that you like, your glasses sit on your face. It's kind of something that's ignored. So what your brain has is what's it called? Is that when something is overly stimulated. So like it's a constant stimulation of like your glasses fitting on your face or clothes on your body. So you stop ignoring it. Yeah. So what happens when another thing with marijuana is that you don't have that anymore. It doesn't, the constant stimulation doesn't get turned off. You feel it again. So then everything becomes very, you know, your senses are like, wow, I can feel everything. It's just that your brain is actually starting to perceive the constant stimulation. Yeah. Another thing too is that like, it's called something. I remember learning in physiology, but my brain's kind of like, it's been a couple years since I've taken physiology. Yeah, no,
take your time.
What's it called? You have like a feedback mechanism that keeps you breathing or like keeps you walking and everything. Like if you walk, you don't have to think about what foot goes in front of the other, you know? Right. To like move places, your brain just kind of automatically does that. Well, since becoming hyper aware of everything, you also become hyper aware of what your bodily functions do. So like when you're high, you can feel like, oh, I forgot to breathe. Right. You know, like, wow, I forgot. I've just been holding my breath for how long, you know? And for me, the munchies didn't happen until like maybe the 15th time I was high, but it was just a craving for like my stomach feeling empty. And there's two hormones that are responsible for making you feel full and making you feel hungry. And so that's like, there's an imbalance of it. And so that's why you start to feel hungry when you're high. But as I said, like it probably takes a while to happen because you have to become, what's the word? Like not sensitized to it, desensitized to it. And so like, that's probably why for me, at least it took a while to actually feel the munchies. Anyway, but those are like one of the symptoms from like, I guess 1 to 10, you start to feel those way. Yeah. But what I felt in this particular high was that it kept going. And normally when I get way too high, it feels like the room is spinning because it's like, wow, I can just like, you know, it feels like I'm moving very quickly. Like like Gabe described it when he was way too high once, is I can feel the earth moving. Because it feels like you're constantly moving, like your balance is off. And so it just kind of feels like everything's going forward and not stopping. And normally around that is when you start to also feel nauseous because it feels like everything's moving. So you start to get sick.
Yeah.
This was and for this particular high, I never got through that step of feeling I never got to that step, but I'd never felt nauseous. And so I kept going. And what I was noticing is that, when you look at a screen on a phone or on a TV, it's just made out of like little pixels of light. Yeah. It felt like when I was looking at things, I could see like it broken down into pixels. Oh, I didn't know exactly how to describe that, but it felt like I was seeing all the individual colors that make it up. So like if I was seeing like something that's purple, I feel like I could see the reds and the blues there in that particular thing.
And not on a screen. You're not.
And not on a screen. No, just
anything,
like looking around the room, like on plants or whatever. I was just seeing that. And it was almost like a moving thing. And so I was like, is it maybe, first I was like, like I've never felt this way. Is this shrooms? Is this how shrooms is supposed to feel? I've never been done shrooms, or I've never done any other psychedelics. So how would I supposed to know? Also, this was from a dispensary. So I was like, no, it can't be, but what?
Well, it's probably that it was so pure.
I have no idea.
From the dispensary that you're having these next level effects.
Yeah. And the friend that I took it with, she also was having these effects, but she took it, I guess, 20 minutes. So like there was a delay in 20 minutes between her experiences and my experiences. Like she would go through them and then I would go through them. And then it was like back and forth. And then the next level of what she referred to as the Z-axis of like, she kept referring to it as the Z-axis, which was really funny to me because it was like, everything's viewed on the X and Y axis. Like you think that this is it. Like if you're living in a one-dimensional world, to be told that there's two dimensions is like mind blowing.
Right.
For us, it was just like, I didn't even know that there was this level of high, and it was getting overwhelming. Like it was just some overwhelmingly stimulated, way of being. I don't know exactly how to explain it. And it just made me feel like I wanted to be out of it. It was starting to get miserable. Yeah. And I was literally asking, like, someone needs to punch me and knock me out. Like, I couldn't even lay down and try to sleep because I would still feel it. Like, I would literally still be experiencing all of this and I probably couldn't sleep. Yeah. So I need someone to just, like, knock me out, like, take me out of this. And so it was getting to really bad. And then also just like breathing and stuff, like I started to lose function of my limbs. I couldn't move them, like almost like the sleep paralysis or something, but it was just like I couldn't move them. I had no feeling in them. They were going numb. And then I was having a hard time breathing because I was like, I feel like it's just like pushing a huge weight, like really taking all of my effort and all of my muscle to just breathe in and breathe out. And so it was like, oh, fuck, I feel like my body's shutting down, like the whole like nervous system kicking in to keep your body breathing and keep your heart pumping and everything. I feel like that's like been tampered with. And like now I have no function over my body anymore, and it's just is shutting down. I'm like, crap, this is it. And it's all because of this edible. I fucked up. But it was an utterly worldly experience. But I also think that that's the kind of level of detail that I go into when I explain how drugs feel or explain anything. So I mean, you can probably like experience it with me as I'm describing it.
That's better. Yeah, I'd much rather that.
Yeah.
Because the thing is,
I would not recommend anybody wanting to experience something like that.
The overload thing, I think everybody has a different capacity.
Yeah.
But I think mine is super low. I think it's easy for me to be overloaded just by and maybe it's just a tolerance thing, maybe not, but it can get miserable really quickly.
Oh yeah.
To the point where it's like, why don't I just go write a book or something? Why don't I do something that has less of a downside for me?
Yeah.
And a number of those things is like I feel like working out is better than getting high for me. Because the trade-off is actually, like, especially things like runner's high, going for a jog, where it's like, this is gonna, I don't know, it takes some amount of effort, so that's a downside. You know, if it's raining, then maybe not. But the upside of...
I said treadmills.
Treadmill? Nah, I'm not a treadmill guy. I gotta see the scenery. I gotta look around. You know what I mean? I grew up skateboarding, riding bikes. Like, for me, seeing stuff move past me is an important part of the experience.
Gabe's the same way. For me, I like numbers.
Okay.
I like numbers.
That's true. Measurability.
I like measure because for me, it's easier to like be able to be like, oh well, I'm so used to running at this this speed.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to move it up and then see progress that way. I can actually measure the progress. Yeah.
Well, that's how I feel about weights. Because I do a lot of body weight movements by force, to be real with you. but the beauty of weights for me is exactly that each week I can add some amount of weight and do something that I couldn't do the last week. And it's psychologically very rewarding. And that's what I was going to say about jogging too, is that aside from the runner's high, it's psychologically rewarding to be a jogger. And that reward is, once you get that momentum going, no pun intended, right? Once you get that momentum going, it really is the few downsides that come with it are overridden by the huge upside of like, oh yeah, I get to do this regularly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, healthy person.
Just starting to run again after not running for a long time and, at least the first 2 days, like I knew exactly what that would entail because when everybody gets started and if not exercising ever, then you just feel sore. Yeah. And then you're like, I'm not going back because I feel sore. But then you go back when you're sore and then you become even more sore. And then eventually your body kind of gets used to it. Yep. I mean, running and getting back into like going to the gym and stuff was actually really great for me. It felt like it was more like a sense of accomplishment, but also a sense of purpose. Yeah. There's a way of monitoring it, seeing progress and everything like that. Also going up the stairs and being able to catch your breath is nice.
That's true.
I remember like it just, at least in my old job, I was like, I had to go up like 2 flights of stairs. And
in the lab? It was just,
because we had our lab, was on multiple floors. So we had we had a room on the second floor, but we had a room in the first and the basement. But then we had equipment that we would use in other rooms and in other buildings. So we would have to also go over to another building for their growth chambers or whatever it was.
They didn't give you guys a little golf cart or something to drive around?
Oh my God, I wish. We had this rattly ass cart. And I don't know if you know about the any of the paths in Davis, like UC Davis is like, it's okay for bikes. Yeah. But when you're pushing a cart full of like plants, it's just like a fucking bumping
because bikes have the tires and they're also very thin.
Yeah. And also like even just pushing that cart with all the fucking bikes just zooming past you, have no regard for the fact that I'm carrying plants. Yeah. People relate to class.
People don't respect plants in general.
People don't. And you know what? I probably didn't either. Like honestly, if I didn't get this job in plants, I had no regard for plants at all. Like,
so what's the new job? You've probably told me before, but
I mean,
in one lab and now you're in another.
Yeah. So before I worked in the plant pathology department. Yeah. But I worked with mainly in insects because pathology can be fungal, can be insect, it can be whatever. But
Scoby.
Now
it could be kombucha, Scoby.
Yeast.
In some sense, I work in a lab.
You work. I mean, it's lab work. Well,
it's a cold closet.
There's a thing in science. I don't know who said this, but it's a quote, and it's like it's only science if you write it down. So if you didn't write it down, you're just fucking around.
And stuck it on the mason jar. So 1/6 is when I put the sugars in.
Now you got to give it some time. Yeah. See, well, now if you start recording that, then that's science.
No, I'm just gonna put a metal straw in there.
No, you're just fucking around. You're just fucking around now.
Fucking around is better. Fucking around is closer to reality anyway.
I mean, yeah. So with my new job, I work in plant sciences, which is not all that different. But since we work with, we're in the same department as like the biochemistry, molecular biology, cell biology, microbiology. We're in that same area and we work with the labs in the area. Mm-hmm. So they all are doing that, but we're in plant sciences particularly. So we don't focus anything on the insects at all. I actually don't work with insects anymore. Before I worked with like 6 different types of insects. Now I work specifically with the plants, like just the plants. And a lot of it is genetics works that I'm working on particularly.
CRISPR, huh?
I work with Cas9, but not CRISPR.
What's the difference?
One is an enzyme. And one is a system of, I'm probably going to get like quoted on this wrong, but one is a gene editing tool and the other is the Cas9. It's CRISPR-Cas9 because it involves the Cas9 enzyme. Mm-hmm. But
that's just one part.
But that's
of the
just one part.
Tool.
Yeah. So one's like a gene editing. We don't do a lot of like to say we don't do gene editing is kind of wrong to say, but
is breeding considered gene editing?
I think like yes,
like artificial selection.
Yes,
yeah,
but like when we're talking about like gene editing, at least in the terms of my lab, what we're doing is like physically editing the gene. Like what I do is like, okay, well, we want to grow or not grow. We want to take this particular part of a gene, we sequence it, and then we're going to put it in a plasmid, and then the plasmid's going to take it and put it in the plant, and then express that gene. Okay. So what we do is, so my particular work, and I'm going to be starting on different work soon, but I'm actually going to start working for the Department of Defense.
Oh, perfect. So, that's where every scientist works.
And so I have to sign a non-disclosure.
So you can't say it on this podcast, what you're working on at the Department of Defense?
I don't even know yet. So
once you know, they'll bomb the house if you tell me.
I have no idea what'll happen, but I'm not going to take that risk.
No, it's not worth the risk.
But I know that what I'm currently working on is not, and what I'm working on now is just, like a better way of putting it is, how the sky's blue. We all know the sky's blue. It's like, okay, well, now how do we prove that the sky's blue? How do we measure it? How do we do whatever? So we know that in plants that there's a specific gene that I'm working with. It's called TRS, the tobacco rattle, TRV, tobacco rattle virus. And we know that when a plant is infected with this virus, that the virus doesn't actually carry on to its seeds. So if you collect a seed from this infected plant and grow the seed, it doesn't, like the seeds don't have the virus. Okay. And that's true for a lot of plants. There are actually very specific viruses that affect the progeny is what it's referred to as. The plant's Offspring? I feel like offspring's like not a very good word to use for plants, but I mean, it is their offspring. There's very few viruses that do that. So essentially I'm taking this specific virus and all I'm trying to prove is that the progeny is unaffected by the virus. So we take a sample of the host virus or the host plant and see, okay, it's infected. Grow them up, get the seeds from them, plant the seeds, grow them up, and then take the seeds, grow them, and then take samples from that, and then just see if they have the virus or not.
And you do this 10 billion times.
Yep.
One each day. One for each day that you're paid. You do it once.
Just a bunch of times until there's enough data, until there's enough repetitive or repeated it enough that there's the statistics show that there's that's true. So we're just kind of proving something that's already kind of commonly known. Yeah. Just so that we have data to actually back the commonly known thing. Yeah. So it's in that case, it's just kind of like an easy like paper to publish because it's kind of like already commonly known. So we already kind of know what the answers are going to look like. Yeah. And if they look like otherwise, then it's going to be like like, okay, great. Like they look different. So now we can prove something else.
Now we have a real discovery.
Yeah. So either way, whatever evidence that we get from this, it's going to be interesting. But for me, that's like it's a very small project that I'm working on to kind of just get me settled in the lab, and teach me all of the techniques that I'm going to be using, from here on out. I'm going to be doing a lot of cloning as well. And,
we need more of that.
Cloning.
Well, for plants, we really do need more of that. And for humans, we probably need more of that.
Cloning.
Just take the good ones, clone them, and then
I feel like this is going to lead to like some Star Wars bullshit, with the clones.
Yeah, Attack of the Clones.
Oh my God.
Well, as long as they're good clones. Then what if there were more of
nature versus nurture?
Hey, just clone them in a way that doesn't allow for nurture to really have much of an effect.
Oh boy, I don't know that. I don't know if we could probably do that with
their DNA. You know how to edit DNA, right? Do it. Go to work.
I feel like it would be really complicated to do with humans because we're like the way that our psychology is completely different than, not like completely different than animals, but like to clone like a plant per se. It's a lot easier because they don't have like, plants don't have brains. The psychology is
the brain. That's true. They don't have brains. Well,
they're not sentient beings.
Arguably, someone has made the argument that, I think it was the movie Avatar, made this argument that networks of roots can somehow or another be the equivalent of a brain as long as there's signal processing that can be measured or something along those lines.
I feel like it's plants are very interesting because they do like they're considered a living creature because they fit all the classifications of a living creature. And I mean, so does bacteria, et cetera, et cetera. But the dynamics between like an animal versus a plant or any other sort of thing is all dependent on how the cells function as a whole. So it's not necessarily about how cellular function on an individual cell level, but more of like a cellular, like an organism. They always teach us, like in biology, it's like, we have cells and the cells become this and then they become tissue and then organs and then organ systems, organisms, like all of the whole classifications of biology. But, yeah, no.
By the way, all of those seem extremely shaky. The biology conversation about life, to me, seems like the physics conversation about something from nothing, where the shakiness is more philosophical than anything else. It's like, what does it mean for there to be something? Oh, it means, well, we only know of certain things, so not that.
You mean like the classifications on what is life?
Yeah. It seems like, well, does anybody really know?
So we classify life based on, like, at least biology in general. We classify life based on these ways that we've decided.
Yeah.
Not because of like there are these ways out there, but we classify life as something that adapts to change, pH, temperature, stuff like that. Something that reproduces. There's like a whole list. I remember. I can't remember this very minute, but that's also why we can't exactly classify viruses as life, because viruses need a host.
Yeah.
And if viruses don't have a host, then they're not considered really living because but they do have their own DNA. They do have their own RNA, whatever else it is. And they do have some sort of things that we would consider life, but they don't meet all of them, which is why we don't consider them living creatures. So it's like, I really like having the discussion with other biologists who know about this on like whether or not they consider viruses life.
Yeah.
Because at that point you just kind of have to know a lot about viruses or like just kind of like on the point of like bacteria being life as well, know? Yeah, no, that's a, but I don't know a lot about the physics portion of that.
Well, what I'm saying is like
all comes from nothing.
There's some circular aspect to it. So you could say, okay, response to pH. That's one of the criteria for life. Well, why is that one of the criteria? Well, it's because we've observed things that we already considered alive, and then we just said, well, they all kind of do. We already have this. We secretly have our own kind of conclusions that are already decided. And then we're just saying, well, we know that dogs are alive and they respond to pH, so let's just have that as one of the things. We know that dogs are alive and they're this, so let's have that as one of the things.
Science is all observational work.
It is, but classification is especially sticky. But what I meant with the similarity with the physics thing is that there is this debate of how do you get something from nothing, the Big Bang, right? That's what they're saying. Yeah. Well, the thing is, the definition of what something is actually under debate, because as if you're educated in physics, you could make the argument that the more we learn about the universe, the better position we're in to even say what something means, the term something. Whereas if you're not educated, you might end up giving a definition that doesn't actually align with the modern view of the world. So an example of that is you could say... I was
actually... sorry. I have a point, but I just
Go for it.
It's like people who don't know what the word theory means.
Yeah. Well, I think that one's an easier debate, though.
Yeah.
But maybe it's similar. Actually,
it's an easier debate, but I think of more of like the whole, what I mean by that is the lack of education versus education. And when you hear like a lot of people, like the common, like just a normal person who's just uneducated in that particular subject, here's the word theory, they think of it as being something that's like, like not factual. It's a theoretical thing. But if you're in science, then you know, like a theory is like the highest it can get. There are no facts in science, because everything, if there's some way of disproving it, then like everything's a theory, because you can't overlook evidence that would disprove it.
Right.
So I just like that. It's a similar basis of uneducated people saying that something is something. And
and the summary of that, I've heard this before, is that the normal person, when they hear theory, they think hypothesis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But in science, hypothesis is the first thing. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's a matter of education. Like you could say, there's nothing, if you think it's possible to have a sensible way of talking, maybe in the past, that would say air is nothing. Because you could say, oh, there's nothing here. And that would actually be a sensible thing to say. But it's not sensible anymore, because we're saying, well, there's the nitrogen, the oxygen. We consider those things now. Just because you can't grab it, it's a gas. That's a property of a gas. Anything could be in that state of matter.
Yeah.
So the more refined your background is, your scientific background is, the better off you are to even say what nothing even means.
Yeah. Even things like energy or time.
Yeah.
Just things that are
time,
like,
especially.
Because those things are just hard to, not like measure, but like, because the whole time is irrelevant. It's just kind of like the way that we measure things, like just even like metric system versus whatever, is all arbitrary.
Yeah.
You know, like, we just defined it based on unchanging characteristics of, whatever. But if you actually have you ever actually looked into like what makes a centimeter versus something else?
Yeah.
It's all like, it's like, or even why we decided that 60 seconds was a minute.
Yeah.
Like all of those things, time is just kind of arbitrary. It's just like, it's a way of measuring the things around us, and which is all human made. Like essentially. Yeah. But I mean, science is a human-made thing.
It is. Well, the beauty of it is, despite those arbitrary measurement systems, you can still make meaningful discoveries in the world, because the things that you're measuring, you just use that system.
Yeah.
As long as the system is consistent with itself, it'll work. And you can create some other system, and you'll still have the same discoveries. You still need this amount of rocket fuel to get the jet into space.
Yeah. I think that what I like about math in particular is because it's one of those things where if we were to erase everything, we would probably still discover math again.
Yeah.
And it would be consisted of the same things.
Yeah.
Whether we have, the numbers 1, 2, 3, or whatever, we would use different words or different whatever of recording them, but they would still mean the same things.
Yeah.
But another thing too, I mean, more of like the whole measuring temperature. We have multiple ways, Fahrenheit, Celsius, but they're all, Kelvin, and they're all measuring the same thing.
Yeah.
but there are different ways of measuring it. But that doesn't take away from it being a system of measuring, temperature per se.
Like for me, I just look at my kombucha, and that's how I measure the temperature. It's very inaccurate.
Is it frozen? Have you seen the fortune telling, or what is it, the weather rock?
No, I have not.
I should show you this picture of it's called the weather rock, and I was talking to someone at the dog park, which is funny. It's a funny statement to say, but he's a professor. A lot of the people at the dog park here, they're all like people associated with the university in one way or another. It's actually really funny.
It's a college town,
I mean, and the people who are going to be living in these like suburban communities here are probably professors.
Yeah.
But he was talking about how his friend was a meteorologist back when he was in college, and that what his friend would always be right about whatever he predicted. Wait.
I'm gonna piss.
Okay. All right. I'll find it on my phone so that you can look at it.
I recommend all but the revenge. Don't taste it. The trick to make friends with the gin, don't chase it. Sick mathematics, but the dick fantastic. Don't get dramatic, keep the shit old fashioned. I already told you sheep ass niggas I'm about to cook up a meal ticket, and if you ain't fucking with it, deal with it. I'ma grind out until they blow my mind out. The bitch was ugly, but she kinda fine now. We bout to space out, we at Time House. I'm hitting 5x5s lately, they got no drive. Don't whine when I drive crazy, I don't mind until I grind out my mind, baby. My sign wavy, I cosign. Navy, heavenly, I'm Hades. Peasantry, I pay dues, my ones and twos betray me. I've learned rules and safety, they've earned tools and training. I've made fools of make-believe and then fell for painting. It ain't need to say, but my aiming was amazing. Within a context, aesthetic palm pressed don't mix for a strong flex. I'm thumb wrestling unrest, I bring no contest. My flaws, I'm too honest, I took your draws, Pocahontas. And every time you leave, you come back like Haley's Comet. Fuck the comments and the likes, I'm not the type. My sight's on heights, he can't reach with the hype. I told Swiper not to swipe, but he swept. They took that bitch ass nigga's chain, Jesus wept. Jesus swept.
All right.
I was hoping he would like make some of the normal noises that he makes when he like groans. Flops on the ground. Yeah. That would be pretty funny.
All right, the story, and then I'll wrap it up.
So the story was this guy was friends with a meteorologist in college.
Yes.
And
this is the guy from the dog park.
Yeah,
Yes.
One of the professors back when he was in college. He was friends with this meteorologist, and the meteorologist was always like spot on. And he said it was because he made incremental changes to what was like saying that it was a 75% chance of rain, and then he would slowly like increase it to 80 and increase it to whatever it was until it was raining and it was 100% rain, And he's like, wow, you predicted the rain, but it's like they're just changing it as it's going.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this.
Okay, John's weather forecasting stone. Stone is wet, rain. Stone is dry, not raining. Shell on the ground. White on top, snowing. Can't see stone, foggy. Swinging stone, windy. Stone jumping up and down, earthquake. Stone gone, tornado. Yeah, that is a good weather forecasting system.
It's the most accurate.
The most accurate. Speaking of the most, it is time for the most important question in the universe.
Question in the universe.
this or that?
I'm going to go with this.
That's right. Hey, strawberry, blueberry.
Strawberry, blueberry.
One berry, two berry.
One berry, two berry.
That's a snack, blackberry. Hey, do I really want the stem or the cherry? Bucket naked doing mathematics. Hey, dynamic, I don't mind static. Hey, can't deny it, I might die tonight. Hey, every rainbow's just white light. Keep my toppings on topper. Helicopter, draw the whole lot. Cartographer, think about dots. Philosopher, check the bars with a barometer. Not a day without chefing, that's negligence. Don't trust what I say, check the evidence. It all depends on the mold you were shaped in. What you make from the leaves that you rake in. Either you get it or you don't. Either it's burnt bread or it's toast. Either a wavelength or a note. Either a joke or a real quote. Either use it or lose your vote. Strawberry, blueberry. One berry, two berry. That's a snack, blackberry. Hey, do I really want the stem or the cherry? Not the most musical, more Dr. Seussical. All my work's useless, I keep my dick usable. I'm a nuisance, the proof's in the juices. Finish all your trig and your sig, big Newtons. She smoked that estrogen and progesterone. Threw it in the vape, took it to the dome. Fuck it, I might hit the testosterone. Shots cut, dopamine with some melatonin. I can't tame it if it's too tame. I can't name it, it's a new name. Left, right when the life came. Every night play the dice game. Draw the line through the right planes. Is it mean if I don't mean it? What's a fucking mean to a deviant? And not to diss you, but you stop chefing. I don't miss you, I have no tissue. Strawberry, blueberry. One berry, two berry. That's a snack, blackberry. Hey, do I really want the stem or the cherry? I keep it one more than 1,000. I see these sheep charged up, keep it rounded. Somebody show these where the pound is. I think the kitchen's getting crowded. Same place, different state. Same shit the chefs love, the sheep hate. Keep my beats in a briefcase. Never cheap with the beefsteak. Nothing free in that sweepstake. I think they're locked into the optics. I'm like the opposite, I'm like their compliment. I'd rather say a lot with a little. Sold the violin, got a fiddle. If you don't experiment, you don't walk. You wanna talk? Are you really about the chalk? Then please shut the fuck up. Enough is enough. Sheep ass arguments, get your tongue cut. Strawberry, blueberry. One berry, two berry. That's a snack, blackberry. Hey, do I really want the stem or the cherry?